Obama, I played it just before the break, Obama himself recognized he didn't have the authority under the Constitution to do what he did on Daca. He did it anyway. Congress was furious at the time. It's now in the position it's in. And the president, I think, was being pretty nice to Congress, saying, all right, I'll give you 6 months. Fix it. Do it whatever way you want.
I thought it was a very, very effective solution to a hard problem. The president knew, all of his senior lawyers had told him, it's unconstitutional. He campaigned on being unconstitutional. The vice president, as governor of Indiana, instructed the attorney general of Indiana to join the lawsuit saying it was unconstitutional. Well, you couldn't turn around and suddenly say, we didn't mean it. On the other hand, you do have, I think, 690,000 people who would be affected overnight if you just, jerk the rug out. And the big argument about constitutionality is that Congress didn't approve it. Nobody disagrees that if Congress were actually to pass an appropriate law and the president were to sign it, then it would all be fine in terms of legality. You can argue about the policy, but it would certainly be legal at that point. So I thought the president, by saying, look, he actually gave him more time than I thought he would. I mean, I would have been comfortable if he'd given him 3 months. 6 months is more than generous. They ought to be able to get the job done. Orrin Hatch, who's very senior on the Judiciary Committee, has said he's going to do everything he can to pass it.
Well, I think you're going to be burdening them. I mean, I think you're setting your expectations too high because Mitch McConnell thought 8 months to keep their 7.5-year pledge on health care was just beyond, anybody's realistic expectations. So maybe you're putting too much pressure on these poor people.
This is a lot tinier bill. Lindsey Graham's already got a bill in. I've had some friends drafting a bill I'm going to send over that's very clean, very narrow, because I think this is one of those deals where their job, and the same thing, by the way, is true of the tax bill, their job is to get it done. Perfection later doesn't work. They've got to meet the 6-month deadline. They ideally should meet it this fall before they adjourn for the end of the year. And they should take care of the dreamers and then set up the right kind of standards, the right kind of program.
Shouldn't the president get funding of the wall as part of this?
Well, I think there are 5 or 6 things that ought to be packaged that could be part of. I wouldn't use it as a bargaining chip because I think there's something really insensitive about using the lives of human beings. It's either the right thing or it's not the right thing. If it's the right thing, let's get it done.
Well, is it the right thing to protect America's borders?
Sure, and the Congress ought to pass that. And I think the president has already indicated he's going to be very tough in getting that done, and I think he will get it done. Actually, it's ironic. Most of what he's doing in immigration is very popular. I mean, people get the idea you shouldn't have these sanctuary cities where the politicians side with the criminals. They get the idea you ought to have a focus on MS-13, the El Salvadorian gang, which is so deadly and so dangerous. They get the idea that there ought to be a Cates law enforced, that anybody who comes back in after they've been deported faces really severe penalties. So there's a broad coalition building here that in most of these cases I just cited is in the 70 to 80% range. And that poses a real problem for the Democrats because in these areas they are just isolating themselves more and more from the average American.
All right. So I would argue now moving forward with Congress back in session, and they really didn't accomplish a whole lot, especially in the Senate, in terms of advancing legislation that the president can sign. And I mean on the big agenda items.
Right.
And now we have a debt ceiling vote coming, and then we have certainly a vote on the president's economic plan. And I don't think it's that complicated. I think if they took the rate 7 brackets to 3 and a 15 or 16% corporate tax rate and middle class tax cuts and repatriated money and make sure we're energy independent to create millions of high paying career jobs, I think on the economy, that's a pretty easy do. And it sounds like everything that every Republican would ever want. Why do I expect they're going to screw that up too?
Well, I think because you're a little bit pessimistic.
I think, or am I realistic?
Well, you might be, although I must say I thought Secretary Mnuchin, the Secretary of the Treasury, was very good this weekend in describing the bill, describing the way in which economic growth would score it. I mean, one of the points I've been making is the Congressional Budget Office baseline is down at around slightly less than 2% real growth. You get the economy up to 3% real growth, you create trillions of dollars in government revenue that allows you to have a tax cut that's dramatically bigger than anybody dreamed of. And I think the administration is currently moving in the right direction. I do believe that there is going to be a drive in September to get the bill out of the Ways and Means Committee and through the House. and that the Senate, by the time they finish a continuing resolution by September 30th, the Senate will pivot, and I think they will take it up the first 2 weeks in October. And I'm very hopeful. I won't say optimistic. I'm very hopeful that we will actually see a bill signed by the president by Thanksgiving. And that would be just a huge boost to the economy and a huge boost to the Republican prospects in 2018.
But on these two issues, getting the economy that the president wants on track to create jobs and increase revenues and economic growth, I think is so important. But also they kind of failed. There was a colossal fail on health care. I think Republicans need to focus on getting their jobs done here. And I also think building that border wall is going to be imperative because they promised this. And if they don't have 300 miles of it built, I think people will be angry.
No, I think that's right. And I think that President Trump knows that, and I think he's going to focus on it. And my guess is you're going to see that be part of the package before the end of the year, that there will be some legislation that comes together that includes the wall. I think that there's no question. The people I talk to in the White House all understand that this is literally unchallengeable. It has to happen. And they are trying to communicate to the Hill, look, you tell me what you want, and I'll tell you how many miles of the wall it's going to take to get it.
You know, I guess I'd never seen such incompetence, and I know you have cut them a little more slack, although you're becoming as impatient, I think, now as I am.
I'm drifting your way.
I'm drifting your way. I'm out on a sailboat drifting my way. I mean, if the winds are blowing a little quicker, and they're blowing quick everywhere now, maybe they'll get some urgency, which I wish they would have. On top of that, at this point, after North Korea has done all that they've done, firing a missile over a Japanese island, and now we have shown them that we can take their missiles out of the sky, and the pledge by Kim Jong-un to keep doing this, it seems to me the next logical step for the United States is when he launches another missile, that we probably ought to be prepared to take that sucker out of the sky.
Yeah,
good idea or bad idea?
It's a necessary idea. I think we should actually dramatically enhance our anti-missile capabilities, and we should communicate publicly that only when missiles have been inspected will they be allowed to fly, and that any effort to fire a missile without inspection will kill the missile, starting with killing it on the launch pad. I mean, if you think about how these missiles work, the slowest and easiest point to kill it is the first 100,000 feet, because it's going straight up.
Agree.
And so what you want to do is develop a combination of laser weapons and hypersonic weapons, and set up a doctrine and be very clear about it. No, we don't trust you. No, we're not going to take any risk that you're going to take out an American city. We're not going to take a risk you're going to use an electromagnetic pulse attack on Tokyo or on Seoul. And so we're just serving notice that, we're not going to start a preemptive war. We're not going to try to knock off your regime. But unless you agree to have us inspect each missile before it is fired, we're just going to kill him and put him in a box. We have the technology.
I love the idea. I don't think we have any choice. And then it gets into bad choices upon bad choices. Because
what I don't want to do is either rely on some kind of real approach. If all we do is talk loud, we'll be like the presidents who have failed. On the other hand, I don't want us to talk ourselves into a box where we decide that we have to have
a full-blown war.
A full-blown war, because as you and I have talked about before, there are so many thousand artillery pieces and missiles aimed directly at Seoul.
There's no good option. And then if a war is going to start, it's going to be Kim Jong-un that starts it.
That's right.
And there's a part of me that believes he probably does want it, which is dangerous for everybody, because the net result of that is there's no good options. All right, stay right there. Number one best-selling author, Understanding Trump, Newt Gingrich is with us. We'll get to more of his insightful comments when we get back. All right, as we continue with number one New York Times best-selling author, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, his book, Understanding Trump. So while I was away, we discovered that James Comey, in fact, had written long before he ever interviewed Hillary Clinton or 17 other key witnesses, the exoneration of Hillary. And to me, it just screams of a political fix being in. And to me, it also would mandate, in my mind, that the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, reopen the case about Hillary and emails and now maybe we can get some truth and get to the bottom of this.
Well, it was certainly pretty startling, I thought, to discover, as Andy McCarthy said in the column this week, it's clear that the person who exonerated Hillary is Barack Obama. And he cites exactly what Obama said in April of 2016, and then he shows you exactly what Comey said in that July press event. And it's like Comey's reading off of Obama's notes, and it's unbelievable. And I couldn't agree with you more. I did notice with some encouragement that the Senate leadership has sent a very strong letter to Justice asking for a series of information that pushes this thing, that reopens this whole case. And I think that's frankly very encouraging.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that ought to be reopened here. It appears by every account. I want to ask you this question. So I've interviewed Julian Assange 5 times. He's the one guy that knows where the information on the emails came from. And he's the one guy that knows his sources. Now, keep in mind, like or not like Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, they've never been proven wrong in over 11 years. So my question is, now that he's saying to Dana Rohrabacher and said to me it's not Russia in terms of the DNC email hack or the Podesta hack, my question is, doesn't Robert Mueller have an obligation to find out where the truth is in this and find out whether or not it might have been Bernie Sanders supporters that were disgruntled?
Well, of course. And I think he has an obligation to follow the information wherever it leads, including trying to find a way to interview Assange. I mean, it is interesting, and I have no idea where this is going, but it is interesting how much quieter the news media has gotten about Mueller and about the whole notion of this heroic figure who was going to do everything right, etc. Somehow that's gotten just much, much quieter than it was just a few weeks ago.
Well, it's gotten quiet. We've gone from issue to issue. Remember, it was Russia, Russia, Russia. The president's going to start a nuclear war. Then the president's a racist. And then Melania's shoes, because they had nothing else to pick on as it relates to Hurricane Harvey, because the federal government, the state government, and beside the Houston mayor, everybody kind of did a great job on Hurricane Harvey.
Well, I have to confess, it was a little bizarre to watch the shoes issue, particularly since she had taken sneakers and came out of the airplane when she got to Houston dressed exactly appropriately for what she was doing. I mean, you almost had to think to yourself, these people are so petty that it's almost embarrassing. And how do they go home in the evening and actually think that what they're doing makes any sense?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. With all the media chatter, all the deep state, all the Democrats against the president and weak Republicans, they really are hurting the American people that did vote for a positive change in the country. It is preventing a lot of good work from being done. And at some point, I think the American people are going to see this and it boomerangs back. Do you believe that?
Absolutely. And there have been some very interesting articles. As you know, one of the most interesting reporters who has covered Western Pennsylvania for years and years, now working in New York, is Selena Zito. And she wrote a great article the other day about going back to this one town. And the people there are more pro-Trump than they were during the campaign. And then their view of it is that all this noise is the opposition to the change that they want. So it's not that it weakens their grip with Trump. It's actually reinforced their belief that he must be doing the right thing because look how mad all these people are.
Yeah, well said. All right, Mr. Speaker, good to talk to you again. And I only got a little smidgen, a little taste of what your life is kind of like when you're not working. I'm just saying, I'm not that I'm jealous or anything. I'm happy doing what I'm doing, but I'm just saying it's pretty amazing.
Well, it can be good.
It can be great. All right, sir, thank you. When we come back, wide open telephones on this Tuesday, post-Labor Day edition. We're back, Sean Hannity Show. Hannity tonight, 10 Eastern, Fox News. Quick break, right back. We'll